What is up, guys? We are back yet again, and what is becoming one of my favorite parts of the week when I get to sit down and talk pro wrestling with you guys and just bullshit for the next half hour, 45 minutes, hour, depending on how long I ramble, whatever it may be. But as always, I hope you guys have had a fantastic week. And before we get into the show, don't forget to go ahead and follow the pod on Twitter at kickashpodcast_ and follow me at ASHMANNS. I may be changing that in the near future. I was just the MANNS part kind of throws me off because again, there's like I've said before, there's no S, but I couldn't just do Ash Man because I was taken. So I may be tweaking that in the future. So if I do, I will let you guys know. Just so I promote the proper tag, right? It's pretty important there, but. Not going to waste too much time. We have a full lineup here for the show today. So to get right into it, I do just want to let everyone know that a quick note here, we are all a little bit safer. Don't know if you guys are aware, by safer I mean on the roads and driving and whatnot, because especially if you live in the Florida area, I should say, and or New Jersey or anywhere on the East Coast, probably it looks like, because Tammy Sytch, WWE Hall of Famer for now. I'm sure she will probably be removed, or at least it wouldn't surprise me, because she has officially been locked up, guys. She has had her bond revoked and is behind bars until her sentencing for her driving under the influence yet again. But this time, sadly and tragically enough, killing a 75-year-old man back in March, I believe it was, I believe it was here in Florida. So the fact, first of all, and I believe I've ranted on on a previous show, so I won't, well, try not to get too much into it, but the fact that she was even free immediately after killing a 75-year-old man after driving under the influence is beyond batshit crazy to me, and is just, like I said, just kind of shows another flaw in our justice system. So there's that. I won't get too much into that because that could be an entire show in and of itself, with my opinions there. But this lady, that alone, right? Even if that was a standalone event, like that's more than enough reason to keep her locked up, regardless on if you had the results from her toxicology report back immediately or anything like that. But the fact that she had multiple charges, and I think at this point she has 20 still charges actively out there against her, let alone her past history. So just insane in my opinion. It's just the fact that she, like I said, was even released initially after the poor guy was stopped at a stop sign doing nothing, or at either a stop sign or a light, doing absolutely nothing wrong, just going about his day, and this lady, lack of better words, slams right in the back of him because she's not paying attention, because she's fucked up. And especially nowadays when there's so many ways to get around without needing to drive if you're that fucked up. Of course, we all know, I'm not going to sit here and go through the list right now, let alone the fact that you can call someone, right? We all have our fucking phones glued to our hands and our hips now, so it's like you have so many different ways to avoid a tragedy like that. And I'm not going to sit here and say I'm perfect, because I have made stupid choices in the past myself, but I have not killed a man, and it's just, she needs help, and it kind of boils down to the people that she has in her lives as well. Her boyfriend, whoever, fiance, was there with her. The main reason I'm starting with this now and it's so fresh is because I literally just saw her on the news Friday night after SmackDown, so it's just kind of mind-blowing to me that no one saw the problems that she has. And I don't know, it's just, in a way, it's sad, right? Because it's obvious she has problems, but it's no excuse, and it's not sad enough, because she fucked up a whole life, and not only his life was cut short, right? It doesn't matter your age. He was doing nothing wrong. He didn't deserve to go out like that. It's just between that and the fact that now his whole family is going through this sad and just horrific ordeal because of her dumbass decision. So I'm very happy that she is finally locked up and her bond was revoked. It's about time they made a decision in that light. So, or the right decision, I should say. So kudos, I guess, finally to the justice system for finally locking her ass up and keeping her in there. But moving on, we will touch on a few AEW news here. Well, a good chunk here. Starting off with probably the I would say maybe the biggest talking point in AEW outside of the ring right now. And that is good old hometown hero from this past Dynamite, MJF, and his contract ordeal with, I almost said WWE, but with AEW, and the fact that he is reportedly even more so now leaning more towards going to WWE when his contract is up in 2024, as opposed to re-signing with AEW and being a long-term player with them. Fightful Select is, if I didn't mention it at the beginning, Fightful Select is the one who have recently reported that, and reported it in a serious tone, right? Because it's no surprise, especially if you are an AEW fan and you watch the shows. MJF has been kind of incorporating that, especially this past week, into some of his promos on the air, and especially with his interviews outside of the ring that he has been doing. And he just sat down, and I believe it was either right after Dynamite on Wednesday or maybe right before, with, I think it's Rasslin, Rasslin. It was a random YouTube video that popped up in my feed, so I obviously watched it. It was about maybe 35 minutes or so. Could be off on the timing there, but it was right around the AEW Dynamite show in Long Island this week, which obviously, if you guys are aware, and you watch AEW, like I said, MJF is from Long Island, so he was a huge star, hometown hero, all that good shit. So it was definitely a fun interview, and you guys, or you can see that those guys, MJF and the reporter, I think his name is Brandon, if I'm not mistaken, have a pretty good rapport and a pretty good chemistry, and it's not the first interview they have done together, so I definitely recommend you guys checking that out if you haven't seen it already. But he had referenced a lot of WWE talk in that interview as well. But look, it's still way too early for us to put any type of real stock into what he's going to do one way or another right now. But I think it's fun, right? Before I even continue, I think it's fun, and this is what pro wrestling should be. And it's especially now that AEW is a legitimate, I'll call it legitimate competition for WWE. Maybe not on the same level, obviously, in a lot of regards and metrics and things like that. But they're not nothing to just shake your fist at or just not take seriously anymore. And they're just continuing to grow and grow, and it's an awesome thing. And especially to the fact of there even being a potential contract battle in 2024, and 2024 is also around the time where AEW will be able to negotiate, and I'm sure they'll be able to in the months leading up to that, but 2024 for sure, they'll be able to hopefully obtain a new TV distribution deal with TNT, TBS, Discovery, whatever they're calling themselves now after the recent merger. But yeah, I think, of course, that in and of itself is going to be a whole other discussion at that point. But I don't think it's any surprise. I don't see AEW going anywhere for that matter. I would actually be very surprised if they didn't, or if they weren't able to lock down another TV deal, especially with TNT and TBS. I think they've probably exceeded goals in a lot of respects. And I think we saw an early indication of that when they were able to restructure their deal. Maybe it was a year and a half ago, when they were just so new into their initial deal to begin with. So that in and of itself, I bring that up because obviously the idea at that point is, after bringing even more data and more numbers and more revenue figures to the table, you being AEW at that point, to Warner or, like I said, Discovery, whatever the official titling is going to be after this merger, you have all this ammunition and all of this data to be like, hey, we got X amount on our first contract, and look how much we've grown, and look how much we've exceeded expectations up until this point, and look where we're projecting to go. So I definitely see them getting a much more lucrative deal. And again, this is just me. I wish, but I don't have specific figures, since AEW, of course, is not a publicly traded company, which good for them. But yeah, so I say that because obviously, in my mind, I could see them getting probably double, if not close, between double or triple what they got for their initial TV contract. And with that, you'll have more money to pay talent. And with that, you would have more money to offer someone, say, the caliber of a MJF. So if you're WWE in 2024, and now granted too, within the next year and a half, we'll see how big of a star MJF becomes, right? He and this would be very, very shocking, could flake out, right? And could fizzle out, not be as big of a deal as we thought he was going to be, and just end up shitting the bed. Definitely don't see that happening, but that's still a possibility out there, right? But more likely what's going to happen is he is probably going to be your AEW heavyweight champion within the next 9-12 months, I would say. If not, maybe sooner. I would say a year is probably a good point, though, without getting too much into that right now. But, yeah, so I say that because with him becoming the champion, in my opinion, and probably having a decent title run, I think that kind of leads you to 2024, and I think that is going to be the focal point and maybe the key deciding factor, how AEW treats Max, right? How Tony Khan treats him as a champion. If he hasn't become champion, why hasn't he become champion? Is there a longer term idea booking wise in the future? Is Max okay with that? You know, what obviously what does Max want and what does Tony Khan want, right? Tony Khan may be like, you know, fuck this, it's not worth it, go to WWE if that's what you want to do, right? If you want to sit here and talk shit, and whether they agreed upon it or not, you know, I'm sure it still is kind of, I don't know, you know, depending on, like I said, how okay with all of this Tony Khan is, it could be a good thing, because if the whole idea and Max is 100% set on staying with AEW for life, then come 2024, MJF has been boasting about the potential of going to WWE and how I'm sure he's had feelers, he knows Bruce Pritchard, all that bullshit, and then it's a big fuck you to WWE when he re-signs with AEW, right? So that could definitely play out. Or if you're AEW and Tony Khan and the next year and a half, MJF is still rising in the ranks, becoming more and more of a star. It's undeniable at this point. It's to the point where you have to put your title on him because it makes more sense to do so. It would kind of show your hand if you don't, right? Because whereas with Cody, he had that stipulation where he was never going to even have a match to become the potential AEW champion, since he had lost that stipulation. I believe it was with Jericho because of MJF. So MJF should get title shots. He had that one with Jon Moxley back, I believe it was during the pandemic time frame, which, it was 2020 because it was right around the presidential election, and that was his whole shtick. He was vote for MJF, MJF was for the people, all that bullshit. But yeah, I'm kind of rambling here, spending more time on this than maybe I thought I was going to, but MJF is a fascinating character, and I think he is going to be a huge star for either company come 2024, and I think if AEW and Tony Khan really value him and really think that he can be a star, I think between the funds that you have now, and again, look, I'm no fucking accountant, I know nothing of the financial side, like I said, and I'm not Tony Khan, and Tony Khan could do whatever the hell he wants with his money, right? But my opinion, I would do whatever I needed to do if I was Tony Khan to lock MJF down. I think, like I said, or I was going to say, with the money that you've been generating now and the revenue that you're set to continue to gain in the next year and a half or so, plus what you are ideally projected to make on your TV renegotiations for your contract, I just think it's going to be a no-brainer where if the major thing for MJF at least is a financial thing, I think at that point, obviously he could so now, right? But I don't think it'll be an issue, or it'll even be less of an issue for TK to throw the bag at MJF. And obviously, it's without question WWE can. And like I said all that, but Tony Khan can as well, regardless on if things go well with that new negotiation or anything, you know, or not rather. So I don't know, guys. It's going to be a fun 2.5 years, and it's going to be fun to see how big of a star MJF does grow to be, if all this back and forth is legit, and I'm sure it is, you know, with Cody Rhodes, and this will be my final point here, but with Cody Rhodes going back to WWE and the star that they have presented him to be within, over the first month or so now, and he came over with everything AEW related, right? He kept his entrance theme, which MJF would be able to as well. AEW does not own the rights to MJF's entrance. Mikey Ruckus did not create that theme, which I was a little surprised to learn about, but it's just another thing, right? But MJF could definitely keep that theme, which I think is perfect for him. He could literally keep everything about him. So, and just transition over to WWE essentially just like Cody Rhodes did. So, I don't know, guys, that will be a big thing to kind of keep your eyes on, and it'll be fun to kind of see how it progresses over the next 2 years. Speaking of AEW, there was a little bit of, not necessarily news, but something that I was kind of surprised to see pop up my Twitter feed. Hikaru Shida, she kind of caused a little bit of waves in AEW, and maybe nothing looks like, let me back up. Doesn't look like anything major, but it was rather interesting, and I don't know, just kind of stood out to me. But if you guys remember, she had the Philly street fight with Serena Deeb, and she has not been on TV, at least AEW TV, since then. The angle that they were going with, Tony Schiavone was in the ring with Jade Cargill and the Baddies, and had mentioned that Shida was going to be replaced in the tournament, and they were kind of break the news on who's going to be her replacement and kind of get Cargill's reaction to that, all that good stuff. Well, Shida kind of took to Twitter and quote tweeted that video clip of Shivani making the announcement and everything, and she just said, what? Kind of questioning the segment there, and then sent out a few more tweets after that. The next tweet directly related after that, she said, and I quote, well, I already had 4 matches after the street fight and just finished the greatest fighting musical show, but I seem to have been injured. Japanese wrestling is nothing for them. I'm so sorry, and sorry I couldn't be in the tournament too, unquote. Then she sent out a tweet following that saying, I'm glad from my heart that Chris is in the tournament now. Chris being Chris Statlander, who is the one replacing her in the tournament. And, quote, I'm going to try to enjoy summer holidays in Japan because it has been a while before I had. Be positive, unquote. So, few quick things there. The one thing that kind of stood out to me, and I don't know why, but the line where she said Japanese wrestling is nothing for them. I'm so sorry. And maybe this isn't my place to kind of comment on, and that's fine. But I think that's one of the last things that you could say about AEW, right? I feel like they have spotlighted so many different Japanese wrestlers. Riho was literally their first women's champion. Shida has been pushed to the moon within their women's division and is a main focal point. I mean, for God's sakes, they're doing a fucking pay-per-view with teaming with New Japan, right? And called Forbidden Door in June on the 26th. So it's like, if there's any company out there that appreciates and respects Japanese wrestling more than in New Japan themselves, it's fucking AEW. So that kind of, when I saw that, I was like, what? Like, that's just, again, maybe she meant something in a different regard, and whatever. Maybe she obviously has a different perspective of it, clearly, than I do, which is, of course, totally right, you know, we all have our perspectives, but that's just mine. Like, when I read that, I was like, what? Like, come on, girl. Like, you could say a lot of things maybe about AEW, right? But I don't necessarily think that's one of them. But she did kind of follow that up. I believe it was maybe that same day, or no, it looks like it was the next day. She did a little screenshot from probably like her notepad or something on her phone and addressed it again, stating, quote, after my Philadelphia street fight, a doctor check from AEW was required to participate in the Owen Hart Cup, and I couldn't re-enter the country in time. I'm so sorry to disappoint everyone. These difficulties sometimes happen with international talents. I feel healthy and never stop trying to improve. Please cheer for Chris while I do my best in Japan. Holy Shida will be back soon, unquote. So, it looks like what she's kind of trying to tie up and kind of fix there is essentially kind of like maybe agreeing and kind of saying, like, playing into what AEW was going for, because yeah, you know, if that's, and the way she's kind of presenting it, I think is a good cleanup in a lot of ways, whether that was the intention for it or not. That's just kind of how I interpreted it. In my opinion, what she's kind of saying there, in my perspective rather, is she's saying, look, AEW did take her out of the tournament because she technically isn't cleared to compete with them, because she hasn't been cleared with their medical staff and their officials and their doctors since she didn't make it back in time. Even though in her opinion and she probably is definitely 100%, If you're not cleared, then you're technically not, right? It makes sense. It makes sense for be the same thing in any basketball player, right? If you were out for injury or you were injured at one point and you haven't been cleared to come back yet, whether you're 100% or not, if you don't have that documented by the doctor on staff, you're still considered injured. So that is a cool cleanup, and whether that was the original intention or not, props to all involved there. But good for Shida for maybe addressing what she was bothered by, and it was a good cleanup and no harm, no foul, I think, in my opinion. I don't think there's really anything much more to make out of this. I hope Shida enjoys her time in Japan, and we'll see her soon when she gets back, you know? Serena Deeb is involved in the AEW Women's Championship. She's competing for the title against Thunder Rosa at Double or Nothing. So yeah, I think this is, again, just kind of perfect timing. So I don't really think there's much more to get worked up over. And the last bit of AEW news here before we dip our toes into a little bit of WWE outside of the ring shiznit is a update on the video game AEW Fight Forever. A little bit of updates here, and again, shout out to Fightful Select for the report that I will be referencing. So again, Fightful Select has reported recently that apparently it was a good thing that Kenny Omega needed some time off due to his injuries and the various surgeries that he needed. And real quick, shout out to Kenny Omega. Of course, I shouldn't assume that he doesn't listen to the pod, right? Because now that I can see the geographic information, we are spreading like crazy, so that's pretty cool to see. And again, thank you guys for the love. I definitely appreciate it from all over the world. But yeah, so if he is, shout out Kenny. I hope you're healing well, and we appreciate all the work that you're still doing on your time off out of the ring, I should say. But yeah, like I was saying, that apparently it's a good thing that he needed that time off because he has been a huge factor in his contributions and apparently has gone above and beyond with those contributions to the video game itself. I still haven't seen exactly what he's doing with the video game, but apparently what he's doing is above and beyond. So hey, shout out to you, Omega. But also Mikey Ruckus, VA Zone, so shout out Mikey, has put a ton of work into the game itself. He, of course, is the creator of the majority of the entrance themes that we hear on AEW, unless they brought in music from outside, or if you're Chris Jericho, you made it yourself. Or Swerve, for that matter, as well. But Mikey kicks ass, and Mikey is just amazing at everything he does. So to see that he's been involved with the AEW video game and apparently also putting a ton of work into that is very cool. So it's for me personally, it's cool to see a guy from VA get his props and get credit in a video game and just continue to blossom and just skyrocket like he is. So shout out to him as well. But a little bit of information, we got a little bit of specifics here from the video game itself regarding like the roster size at least. Size, I don't know if I said that properly, but roster size, not sides. But it is currently sitting around 50 right now, and there apparently are notable omissions regarding the first release. So that, again, for me personally, I'm still scarred, right? I guess I should preface. I'm still scarred from the WWE 2K20 video game that I pre-ordered. That was literally the first wrestling game that I had ever pre-ordered. Obviously not my first wrestling game, but the one that I pre-ordered. I went all out and got one of the bundle deals. I had a bonus from work, so I was just like, treat yourself, right? Yeah, and it shit the bed. 2K20 sucked, so I'm still salty about that. I got some cool merch with it and cool memorabilia, but not worth what it was worth. So I say that to say, with all of the back and forth and uncertainty and just, I don't know. I'm definitely going to be getting the Fight Forever game, the AEW video game, of course, but I don't know if I'm going to pre-order it, and I don't know if I'm going to get the first release now especially, so still kind of taking a wait and purchase see on that one. But I will continue. They actually, we have a little bit of a list compiled here, just some, at least with some names that have already been released and a little bit more names that have recently been released as well. Of course, the first one that we are getting is Owen Hart. That was made public when the deal with the Owen Hart Foundation was announced, 6 months or so ago now. So that was kind of a given, but it is still very cool to see and to think that we'll be able to play as Owen Hart in a video game and one that was actually created and not a fan-created character. So that'll definitely be very cool. But we have Owen Hart, Sting, CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, Adam Cole, Ruby Soho, Chris Jericho, Kenny Omega, which, of course, right? Imagine how fucked up that would be if he didn't make the cut and he's working on the damn thing. Like, like, what? But continuing on, Chris Statlander, Darby Allin, Jungle Boy, and Nyla Rose. So the first notable omissions that stood out to me almost immediately after I finished kind of compiling the list here in my notes are Moxley has been announced, Luchasaurus just because we have Jungle Boy, so I figure that that's kind of hand in hand. MJF, how do you have a pillar and not have the pillar in the video game? Sammy, talking about pillars, Sammy Guevara. The Young Bucks, which if they don't make the cut, I will be very, very surprised. That one I feel like maybe should be a gimme to me, but the fact that they aren't already announced is kind of maybe slightly concerning. Santana and Ortiz kind of stood out to me, and then also SCU. Just with SCU being your first tag team champions, I thought that may be a given. You know, maybe not star quality or not quality, but star notability. But if you're going your hardcore roster, it's kind of surprising. But I think this is going to be kind of telling too in regards to who the stars are in AEW, because the whole selling point of the game is going to be who you can play as. And I'm sure we'll get a much more solid idea of the roster itself closer to the time of the video game being released. So I think that's going to be pretty telling to kind of see who made the cut and who didn't. And actually sitting here thinking about it, Britt Baker, not seeing Britt Baker on their Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, not seeing her on the confirmed list already is kind of surprising as well. So that's definitely another one of those things that we'll be keeping an eye on here as the time goes by. But right now, like I said, whatever it was last week or the week before, the tentative date right now is possibly sometime in September of this year, but everything that I've read is pretty much saying don't put your money on that just because of all the delays that they had with the game and the things that they still need to tweak, and they still need to do a lot of updates with the online content. So sounds like we're still a good amount of time away from the game actually being released itself. Moving on here to a little bit of outside of the WWE ring news. Charlotte Flair is out indefinitely. Per WWE, she, of course, had sustained a broken arm by Ronda Rousey in their match at WWE WrestleMania Backlash. So that will be interesting to see how long she's going to be out, but reading a little bit more into it, it looks like she is apparently getting married this month to Andrade. So if that is the case, shout out to them and congrats. That's a wonderful and exciting thing. And I hope she gets to enjoy some time off, or of course they both do. I hope they both don't rush back. I hope they just enjoy their honeymoon, enjoy their time off. But that would be maybe a notable, I guess I feel like I should say notable omission from the SmackDown roster within the next few months, but I could definitely see her being back in July, August timeframe, right around SummerSlam. So wouldn't really be surprising, although I could see her out until after SummerSlam, because I don't really see them needing her, because in my opinion, you have Sasha Banks in the waiting for Ronda Rousey still, you have the returning Bayley whenever she's set to come back, so you have a lot of options, and for Ronda Rousey in particular as well, so I don't see the need to really rush Charlotte coming back, but again, just shout out to Charlotte if she is getting married, if that's the case, and just enjoy your time off, girl. But speaking of time out of the ring, we have more news regarding Roman Reigns and the cluster that has arose from his recent house show sighting at WWE Trenton. The show was labeled as one of their live shows. That was the hashtag going around. I'm sure you guys have seen the video clip by now. It's really hard to make out, but essentially what he was saying is he's not sure how much or how many more times he's going to be on that route. So thank you guys, and just essentially just acknowledging the crowd and just thanking them for coming out and seeing the show. A lot of people took that as maybe him leaving WWE completely, or just maybe beelining it for Hollywood a little quicker than what everyone has anticipated. We have a little bit more news on that, and that's kind of gathered bits and pieces from around the world of the web. so I don't have a specific source to credit here, but essentially what everyone has been saying is after that, and then after this past week, he has recently re-signed a restructured deal with WWE and more of a part-time almost type status. He's still going to be around for the TV tapings and the shows and obviously the premium live events and things like that, but he's not going to be doing as many house shows, if any house shows, going forward. And apparently, depending on who you listen to, he's either going to be out for 10 weeks straight, or he's just going to be missing one pay-per-view, and then he'll be back in a couple weeks, but I don't really know about all that shit. My main focus point is, if you're WWE and you knew this guy was going to be taking time off, or if you had a feeling, or what have you, why the hell do you make him your undisputed unified world heavyweight champion? Like, come on now. So I think they just really got themselves into a shitty situation in regards to who your main focus point is going to be on Raw and SmackDown, for that matter now. You have one guy holding both of your heavyweight championships that are and should be the center focus on both of your shows. And if he's not going to be on TV, especially on both shows, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? And it's not like you have a slew of guys that you can just plop into his spot at any point, and that's kind of what we've all been referencing and kind of concerned about going forward with WWE cutting hundreds, a couple hundred wrestlers and not developing the ones that they have and not taking them seriously and shit like that. So it's going to be a scary and tricky situation that they're going to get themselves into if he in fact is taking a chunk of time off, and it'd be interesting to see if they end up splitting the titles, right? If he still maintains his Universal Championship, but the WWE Championship he loses to, let's say, a Cody Rhodes. However that may happen. So definitely a lot going on there, but Roman Reigns is not out of WWE officially as of now, but this may be the beginning seeds planted in the beginning path of his journey out of WWE and into Hollywood. So it's going to be an interesting thing, and it's kind of weird to think about Roman Reigns not being in WWE, kind of like we all anticipated with John Cena, but it's kind of crazy to think that we're at that point with Roman Reigns already. So we'll be obviously keeping tabs on that as well going forward, but he is not advertised either as on the WWE official Hell in a Cell pay-per-view premium live event poster. We just have good old Cody Rhodes front and center on it, just solo too. His first solo WWE PLE poster. So that's shout out to him. That's pretty cool. But again, another interesting little tidbit. So we'll see what that means going forward for both parties, for that matter. Next week up on SmackDown, though, we do have what is supposed to be, I'm sure, the main event. We are finally getting our tag team title unification match. The Usos, which is, of course, your SmackDown Tag Team Championship, or start that over. The Usos, which is your SmackDown Tag Team Champions, versus the Raw Tag Team Champions and RK Bro, of course, that being Riddle and Randy Orton. If we actually end up getting this match, it's going to be a kick-ass match. Not really set and sold that we're actually going to get a definitive winner. I feel like if we're actually going to get the match itself, we'll get about 10-15 minutes out of it, and then we'll get some type of shitty, screwy entrant, or finish rather, especially with what happened on SmackDown with Riddle just out of nowhere kneeing Roman Reigns right in the face. I could see Roman obviously being pissed off from that and costing Riddle and Orton the match, whether that be a clean victory for the Usos to win or that being a DQ ending. So either way, we set up a rematch for the following pay-per-view, because especially if we're not going to have a heavyweight championship defending title match on the show itself, we have to have some type of heavily promoted title match, right? So I could see that being the tag team championships, whether that's going to be your main driving point for the show itself, or if it's kind of partnered with Cody and Seth in a Hell in a Cell match. So we still have some time to build the card itself, but it'll be interesting to see how next week plays out, because I think that'll kind of determine what we get from Roman as well. But after that, we do have one last thing, which isn't really breaking news or anything like that, but it was kind of just like a really what the fuck moment for me. maybe that should be a segment, our weekly what the fuck WWE moment, but Lacey Evans has been being pushed as turning babyface, right? And we've been getting to see a different side of her, with her talking about all her family issues, the abuse that she had gone through, and things like that. And we had been seeing all these vignettes on SmackDown. Well, apparently, out of nowhere, she is no longer a babyface, and she is going to shit on his fans, just like she always has. And I cannot wait, ironically, sarcastically, to see how they're going to spin this story into making it a negative thing. Which, of course, the matter itself is negative, but the whole idea, I thought, was to be saying this and presenting this to show how much she's overcome. She's a U.S. Marine, she's a mom, she's overcome all this bullshit with her parents, all this baggage and all this bullshit, right? And now she's triumphant. She's a WWE superstar. She's no better than any of the other girls in the back, right? Well, apparently she is, and we're going to see that on Raw now. No idea why she's going to be on Raw, because she's been wasting her time on SmackDown with these vignettes, apparently. But now she's going to be on Raw, and it's really sad to say that, you know, I say that because they really had a chance here to reposition her and to just make her just simple. You didn't even need to go into the detail about her story. And I say that, and it's frustrating because I appreciate that she did. It's a real story. If you listen to her on any other outside podcast or anything like that, like it's a true and a real story. So to see if she is actually going to be a heel, to see them have her tell that story and go through all that, and then just to continue to throw shit in our face as fans, and to just be a heel about it, it's like, it's just disgusting. It's nasty. I don't like it. I don't like that kind of story being thrown in our face. And again, it's nothing new, and I shouldn't be as surprised as I kind of was reading it and coming out of this week, but it was just something that it just kind of stood out to me, and I kind of wanted to throw out there on this show. Before I run through the lineup for what we are going to be expecting for Dynamite next week, I would be remiss if I concluded the show this week without mentioning what happened on Dynamite this past week. And fucking Darby Allin and Jeff Hardy, man, like, what they were able to do in, 10, 11 minutes is just unreal. Jeff Hardy missing the swanton and landing on the side of the steel steps. Of course, the insane swanton that Darby did off of the top of that humongous ladder from inside of the ring. Damn near missing Jeff and landing on a row of steel chairs that were lined up on the outside. And it just kind of made me cringe, because if dude was just inches to the left or to the right, he would have landed center on the top of those steel chairs or on the floor. It's just... Whew, I don't know, man. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand it, but just please be careful. If you're Darby Allin out there, please be careful, my dude. I don't want anything bad to happen to you, and I'm sure I speak for all of us out there, but it's still scary to see. But it was fun. It was a nice little teaser. They had referenced earlier in the show that Darby had gone to TK to ask for a no disqualification match, so the fans can really get what they want, and that he specifically wanted to go to the hospital, so... I don't know if he actually made it to the hospital, but he, not for lack of trying. So, shout out to them. And earlier in the match, or earlier in the night, of course, we got the incredible segment with MJF and Wardlow. And, of course, like I said earlier in today's show, MJF being the hometown hero there in Long Island. And just the incredible package that they did right before that, with Chris Jericho narrating a dark side of the ring and referencing, why am I saying this for this guy? How much is he paying me? Okay, gotcha. So that was a nice little nod there, but just so well done. I can't wait to see what's gonna happen and how this plays out. But MJF is a fucking star, guys, and it's just insane. And also it's fun to see kind of the dynamic that we get being in Long Island with, for instance, like CM Punk being a bad guy in Long Island and just hamming it up and living it up. So I like that that's kind of AEW's bizarro world, to steal a WWE line. So it was just fun to see, and a fun, cool, different type of night. But I did not see Rampage itself, so I'm not even going to act like I did. So I will move on and let you guys know the rundown for Dynamite next week, because I think next week is going to be a stacked and newsworthy show as well. But on the official lineup for AEW Dynamite next week, we have William Regal and Chris Jericho in a face-to-face confrontation, which I think is going to be fucking stellar. Take my money now. And just imagine if we were to get William Regal in any type of match, let alone like a one-on-one match with Chris Jericho at this point in AEW. I just think that could be fucking phenomenal. So, again, just take my money. Next up, we have one of the Owen Hart Foundation tournament quarterfinal matches being Samoa Joe versus a Joker entrant. And I say, so we have that, and then the next up on the lineup, we had another Owen Hart Foundation tournament quarterfinal match, Dr. Britt Baker DMD versus the other Joker that's slated. I combined those two because a lot of people are under the impression and are speculating that that could be Johnny Gargano and, of course, facing Samoa Joe, and the other Joker being Candice LeRae facing Britt Baker, Dr. Britt Baker. If this was maybe 3 months from now, could totally see that being more of a possibility. To me, Candice just had her baby, right? Like, Candice, even though it was 2 months ago, and I'm sure she could if she really wanted to, I don't know, like, I just feel like it's kind of still too soon, and it just doesn't quite feel right. Although I could totally see Johnny Gargano being the Joker for the men's side and fitting that slot perfectly with it being what the tournament is for, right? With it being Owen Hart and everything. So I could see that more likely, but I think it would be kind of cool if you bring them in together. So for that reason, I'm kind of holding off on it even being Johnny at all as well. So although, like I said, if it is, awesome. Big Johnny Gargano fan, of course, Candice LeRae as well, but I don't think it's going to be that. I think the Joker that's going to be facing off against Samoa Joe, at least, is nothing earth-shattering here, but Claudio Castagnoli, right? Cesaro from WWE. And I say that and I don't necessarily think that he's going to be signing with AEW. I could see him coming in as just like a one-off, or maybe doing a few appearances here and there, and just kind of going the indie route, kind of hitting a few random shows here and there, maybe going to New Japan after the summer or what have you. But and especially because he recently opened up his own coffee distribution website business, so it's very cool. I looked at it a little bit myself. Haven't ordered anything yet, but maybe thinking about it, because I love coffee, and I'm a big fan of Claudio Cesaro, so there's that. But I could see it more so being Claudio, and I think you would get a fucking stellar match with Samoa Joe. And even then too, if he doesn't look, is it more of a given that he's going to sign with AEW? Yeah, of course, but I could even see him signing with like Ring of Honor, him being Claudio. So I don't necessarily see it being a given that, if he comes in to be the Joker and face against Joe, that he's automatically signed. I could see it just being maybe initially a one-night thing and then kind of going from there. But with that being said, the Joker on the female side, facing against the Doctor herself, no shocker, my money is on Athena. Good old Ember Moon from WWE. I think it's kind of a no-brainer. I think she is a good talent. I think it's just time, especially since they weren't able to grab like a Mia Yim or anyone like that. I think Athena would be kind of a perfect fit, and I don't know if I see her winning. Again, at that token, do you bring Athena in and then have her lose against the Doctor, or I don't know. I'm kind of, if I had to put money on it, I think maybe you do have Athena win because Dr. Britt Baker has already accomplished so much and she really doesn't need any more shine. So I think you could have Athena win and maybe not win the entire tournament, but win her match here and then progress and then go from there. But those are my picks for the Jokers themselves. Next up on the lineup, we have another Owen Hart Foundation qualifying match, or yes, in the tournament, not qualifying, men's tournament match, that being Rey Fenix versus Kyle O'Reilly, which I'm sure is going to be a banger, and again, it's still so crazy to even see Phoenix being back, so shout out to him again. Next up, we have Hangman Page versus Takeshita, with CM Punk being on commentary, so I think that's, of course, if it's not obvious enough, just designed to get Punk and Page in the same general facility and to kind of see what they're going to do and if they're going to get physical what we're going to get from them on the mic and just kind of going from there. Next up, we have Wardlow on the card. He must take 10 lashes from, I'm assuming, MJF himself or maybe from Shawn Spears. It's kind of the running theme with MJF, right? You have to go through all of these stages of MJF to actually get to the match against the man himself. So it's almost the same thing that we saw Cody Rhodes go through a couple years ago. But we'll see how it goes, and I'm sure it's going to be a good segment depending on... I forget where they're going to be next week itself, so I don't think we're going to get as much hate on Wardlow and love for MJF, so it'll be interesting to see how this segment itself plays out. But then we have one more Owen Hart match itself, Owen Hart Foundation Tournament semi-final match, and that is Adam Cole versus Jeff Hardy. I think that may end up being your main event there, if not Samoa Joe versus the Joker for him, or for the main event rather, but I mean, need I say more about Cole and Hardy? Like, I think I hope they get a good amount of time. I hope it's not rushed like Allen and Hardy was. But yeah, and I think that's gonna kind of stem and play out into the feud with the Young Bucks and the Hardys and the Undisputed Elite and all that stuff as well. So I think that's kind of just the maybe a few more seeds being planted there for what could potentially be a feud and a match at Double or Nothing. So that is the show for this week, guys. I hope you have had a fantastic time listening. Please let me know what you guys think. Again, on Twitter at kickashpodcast_ or at ASHMANNS. Again, the show is on TikTok as well. Still generating some content for that. Nothing real crazy there. Just kind of built the page just to kind of have it there for when I plan to devote more time to it. But that is at Kickash Podcast as well. So have a fantastic week, guys. I hope you have an awesome night.